today. Say thanks for joining us. I know this is a busy time of the year. Some of you may be out already. Some of you may still be getting through the grind of the end of the year. I did want to give one little plug for our summer university, which will be hosted in Columbia, July 15th through the 18th. I'm going to drop a link in the chat for registration. The Academic Alliance, along with the other TA agencies sponsored by the State Department Office of Special Education Services, are offering lots of wonderful sessions, and a lot of them will complement the work we've been doing in the problem solving series by looking at specific interventions and reading and writing. So we hope that you will register for 1, 2, 3, 4 days of sessions, and we look forward to seeing all of you there if you can make it. I will turn it over to Judy. I think Susan's going to share the folder of today's materials in the chat for everyone to access as well.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope this finds you well. We know it is what Jenny just said. It's last part of school, and the good news is that this is being recorded so we could share and archive it. So here is what I thought. How y'all doing? I can't see anybody because you have your cameras off, but I just want to check in and say how y'all doing. What? No one's talking to me. All right. It's okay. I have thick skin. All right. So here's what we're going to do today. We are going to, as usual, this is your session. I'm just facilitating some learning. We're going to do a real quick review of step 3. What I heard was people wanted to see another version of this. So we're going to do an elementary case study of steps 1 to 3. And then we're going to not get into step 4 today because we won't have time. I just wanted to respond to the feedback that you wanted to see another case study. So today we'll do a super quick review of step 3, see if there's any questions around that. And then case study, and then we'll wrap it up. And our next final session will be wrapping up the 4th step. How does that sound for everybody? And please feel free to use the chat box, and that would be great. Okay, let me get this okay out of there. Okay, so what I thought we would do for starting, and I know we have a thin group today, but we're going to do 2 breakouts. So breakout, I just thought it'd be a great time for us just to talk about the big ideas about MTSS and the 4th step.
Jenny, so sorry, we have 2 participants other than our staff.
Okay, so we'll just.
Do you want to break out still, or?
Yeah, we'll split it out into 2 breakouts because otherwise we won't talk.
Okay.
So I'd rather, so you can just split us into, hey, Shelton, how are you? Thanks for joining. So, yeah, I mean, I think we should just go ahead and do this because people are here. So, defining acceptable tier 1. How does defining acceptable tier 1 really set the stage for step 2 and the 4th step? That'll require a little bit of thinking. What are the 4 categories of the hypothesis? What might be some examples? And then step 3 is when engaging in step 2, why is it important to seek evidence to support or refute your hypothesis? You know all of these. And then how does identifying a valid hypothesis for tier 1 problem set the stage for tier 3? So some really good thinking questions on that. So if we could do breakout 1, can do questions 1 and 2, and breakout 2 can do 3 and 4. And so Susan, you can assign all of us to whatever you want to do to 2 breakouts. And we'll be doing this for about 8 minutes, and then I'm going to pull you back. Charlene, hello. Okay, Jacqueline, you were just finish your sentence before you so rudely got cut off. You were doing some ISIL sorting.
We were sorting some observations. We had some look-fors through instructional rounds that we're doing in our district. And so we took some of the things that we found within our look-throughs or look-fors, and then we sorted them into ISIL. So we into 4 stacks, and then we put them around the room and looked at them, and it was we had a lot of evidence to support what we were looking for in instruction, but not nearly as much as we would have anticipated for curriculum. So that was something that, you know, we walked away with like, oh, that's something we need to think more about.
Great. Yeah, it typically it goes down to, you know, I mean, what's your framework for instruction? I'm Madeline Hunter, born and raised and weaned on Madeline Hunter, right? So my framework is always that when I look at it. But what is the, you know, how are people engaging? How are people, you know, all of that good stuff. So that's good. That's a great awakening. Thanks for sharing that, Jacqueline. Great conversation in both groups. Why don't we do a real quick step 1 or question 1? What do we got for that one? Group 1, how does defining acceptable tier 1 fidelity set the stage for step 2? I think we just sort of talked about it. It can be Deanne or Jen. Do you want to?
We did 3 and 4, but we're glad to talk about them.
Oh, you did 3 and 4? Oh, you were group 2. I'm sorry. Let's do group 1. Sorry, that's Sheldon and Jacqueline. I'm so sorry. We had great discussion around 1. So Sheldon or Jacqueline, what you want to summarize what we talked about?
We talked about defining what tier 1 looks like, but then also inspecting it, and then how are we, you know, following up and making sure that what we're expecting in tier 1 is present. And then we talked about over intervening because tier 1's not solid, core and solid, and so making sure that those practices are in place.
Yeah.
First.
And that's great. So to Jacqueline, to your point, what you just talked about is links right into what, you know, Shelton's talking about.
And also just what was the quote from Judy again, Sheldon?
I threw it in my it was cannot intervene out of the core.
Poor core. Crappy core. Don't say
Crappy
that.
core. I won't say crappy, but that's a good one too.
Poor core. You can't enter your way out of poor core. Yep. You might step on toes if you say that, but okay. Yeah. So great conversation about common language, common understanding about what is core, what is tier 1. And, you know, I raised the issue that a lot of people think that if a kid needs some sort of help, they go to tier 2 or tier 3 versus differentiating their tier instruction, tier 1. So excellent. And we had a moment of panic when we did question 2, but they pulled it out. ISIL. Yay. Good. All right. Group 2. Sorry. What do you got?
Okay, we'll step in here.
Huh?
So when engaging in step 2, why is it important to seek evidence to support or refute our hypothesis? So you know you're working on the right thing. So you know that what you think is the problem is actually, you have your data to support that. And Jenny had a really good question during our discussion about what if you validate more than one hypothesis during this step.
And what was the response to that? Jenny?
She just got kicked off and I think is coming back in.
Oh, okay. You want to?
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
Don't know what's
And
going
what was
on. Did you ask me a question?
What was the response to your question when you said, what happens if you validate more than one or all 3 hypotheses? Then what do you do?
You tackle those low-hanging fruit and just sort of prioritize what's the most attainable of the of your hypotheses.
Yeah, which one are you ready to take on? You'll do eventually all of them, but to do them all at once might be a little bit overwhelming. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. Just pick the one you think is the priority and then start with that and then move to the other ones. Great. What about number 4? How does identifying valid hypotheses for tier 1 set the stage for tier 3? Any thoughts on that one?
So with step 3 being implementing the plan or develop and implementing the plan, it's important to validate in tier 1. So you know what's working, you know what's not working, and maybe what's missing to help develop that plan for step 3.
Yeah, identifying what's a valid hypothesis for tier 1. We sort of all just talked about it. You know, going on to more interventions or doing something really is about core or how well are we doing in tier. So well done, everyone. Had to stretch your brain a little bit. That's great. Any questions on these 4? They make sense. They're, you know, they're expanding your thinking about that. Comments or questions on those? Cool. All right. So here's what we're going to do now. I'm going to do a real quick review, just to ask if there's any questions about step 3, which was what Deanne just said is like, what are we going to do about it? You develop and implement a plan and you progress monitor it. We did this last time we were together. And we talked about there's lots of formats. I gave you one format. So let me just ask a question to folks here. I don't want to assume, did you have an opportunity to validate your hypotheses? Shelton, did you get an opportunity to validate? No? Okay. And Jacqueline?
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. It's a lot and yeah, no problems. So then step 3 would come after that. So step 3, we went through. Are there any questions with step 3 at all about writing the plan? The things that popped out was, you know, at the top right, you identify what tier, and usually I find that it's always tier 1 that we're working on. So to the point of the conversation we just had, really important for us to identify what tier are we operating in. Implementation, pretty straightforward. Who, when, why, how, and how long. Support is the other nuance to this plan, is like, who's going to support the person or persons who are implementing this? What kind of support is it and how often are you going to give it? I find that really helps with buy-in, that they know that you have a lifeline always. And then the last nuance to this was the expected performance on the review dates. So put a stake in the ground to say, we're going to get back together June 10th. We're going to review data on Judy, and here's what we expect to see. So those were like the nuances of that plan. Pretty straightforward. Again, you might have a different orientation around it. This is just one that really sort of makes folks think a little bit deeper than just putting intensification of instruction together. Questions on the plan development at all? It must be doing well. All right, so I'm going to walk you through an elementary case study, Elliott Elementary. This is in the same state as Happy High School, so you'll see some similarities. Same district, at the same state that the Happy High School is in. And so just a reminder, these are the 4 steps. You know all that. We'll do step 4. Did it work? Next time we're together. So end of grade reading proficiency and district goals. So in this district, you can see the green line is where they need to be. Same timeline, 2018. So the superintendent's cranking on the high school saying, got to raise your graduation rates, and what up with our reading proficiency in elementary school. So this is Elliott Elementary School data. So the district goal is 80% across the top. The aim line is the green, where they gotta move in order to meet it. And you can see the orange one is sort of where they're headed at the rate they're growing. So they got a big gap in there. Everybody see that? Pretty clear. So if they keep doing what they're doing, it's going to take them 10.5 years to close the gap. The kids will be shaving and driving to elementary school. So let me walk you through what they did. It's very interesting what they did. So again, this is from a couple years ago. So their beginning of year on their M class. So in North Carolina, M class is what everybody uses. This is North Carolina, by the way. So you can see across the bottom is K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the bars are proficiency on the composite. And so I just want you to look at that. What observations do you see as you look at the beginning of year? As the kids come in for the fall, what do you see there?
It looks like it dips after second grade.
Yes, ma'am. You see a little bit of dip from second to third. Great. What other observations do you see? Are we surprised that K is so low? Right. Their first experience in school, they come with what they come. That's what they look like. What else do you see? What is a trend in there that might keep you up at night? Come on, don't be shy. There's no right or wrong.
I
Well,
would
there
say
might be a wrong, but
fourth grade dip, because third grade is the first time they're actually, I understand this is M class, but really state tested in third grade, but it's for there to be that dip in fourth grade.
Well,
Yeah.
also, if you take a look at fourth and fifth, I guess with this, if I'm reading this correctly, then we have 40%, a little more than 40% of our students who are proficient, and a little more than 50% who are proficient at fifth grade. So basically, you're talking about both of the, say in fifth grade, you've got half of your kids who are not going to be proficient.
Oh,
That's a lot.
excellent. I think for me, to add to that is whatever they did in kindergarten stuck. Because first grade looks good. Whatever first grade did, second grade looks strong. And then something happens between second and third, and whatever third did or did not do puts those fourth graders at bigger risk. And something happened in fourth grade to get those kids to go back up. Capiche? Okay, so the team is looking at data. They looked at it, just take a look at this one. This is by race and grade level. You can see the Black is blue, Hispanic is yellow, white is green. What are some trends that you see in here?
I would say the Black population follows the trend, the overall trend we just looked at.
Oh, nice. They go up in first, they stay pretty up in second, they drop in third, really drop in fourth, and go back up in fifth, okay? You could probably say that about the Hispanic kids too, yeah?
Mhm.
I would say too, when you even just look at the whites, you have this, I mean, there's a trend line down.
Yeah. So something between first and second.
We
Yeah.
scoot back up, but
And this is cohort data, by the way. So it's the kids who are in first are now in second, and the second graders are now in third. So yeah, so the white white is higher, but it also trends down, then it pops back up. It stays a little stable, and yeah. Okay. So let me know if I'm going too quickly here. Let's take a look at their middle of the year composite proficiency. We started the beginning of the year. We looked at that, which is this one. Now we're going to look at the middle of the year. So the district is on the bottom. Overall, middle of school year elementary kids are 79% proficient. However, this is elated elementary school. What do you see here? Similar, different? What do you see?
I see they're below the district average.
Way below, yep. Because that's and I'm just going to keep popping around here for a little bit. You go back to this, they're way below where they need to be. However, something's up with that school because everybody else seems to be cranking a little bit. So what do you see in terms of K to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3? Anything look familiar or different?
It's pretty much on trend with the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and you're gonna see as we take a look at the observation with all the data, that one of the cohorts made virtually no progress at all since the beginning of the school year. Okay, so they look pretty identical to the beginning. Not a huge change. That's the beginning of the year. This is the middle of the year. Are you with me? Everybody? Shelton, Jacqueline, are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. So then let's look at the TRC. What do you see there? I mean, you can gather anything to triangulate data, but they picked the TRC. So what's the blinding obvious one there?
4th.
Man, that would keep me up at night. So you can see kindergarten's 52, 61, 62, 57, and then a 38. And then again, bounce back up to 52. Okay. So this is their early warning data, attendance, the M-class TRC, and behavior data. So as you look at this, what would be the observations in terms of where we have the biggest concern? Do they have behavior issues? Major K to 5 is like office daily referrals. Minors are, majors where you go to the office. Minors are something that you just deal with in the classroom.
I wouldn't see that as being that bad.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree with that, but that's my opinion. But yes, if you look at it, it's not that alarming. We should be happy with that these days. What about their attendance?
It looks like it's below the 95%, but I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
93 to 95 is not that big of a difference. So I don't see that as being the biggest item of concern out of this.
Yeah, and remember, there's two indicators when you look at attendance. So 93% of the kids in the school are coming 95% of the time.
Okay, got it.
And then, which is excellent, holy moly. And then 7% of the kids are coming less than 95%. Because people go, oh, we have 95% attendance. Great. How many kids are coming 95% of the time? So there's always a trick to attendance data. So 93% are coming 95% of the time. That's excellent. Elated elementary school, my opinion, especially this day and age. And 7% are coming less than 95%. So I'd want to dig in to say, like, what 7%, what does that look like? So the one that the school went after is the TRC, because if you look at that, 57%, and I think, Jacqueline, you pointed out on the first slide, 57% of the kids are not proficient. I'm sorry, are proficient, 43% are not proficient. So you're moving close to 50% of the kids in 3rd grade. And we know the data says about 3rd grade, you got to get them reading by 3rd grade because the longitudinal data shows that those kids are the ones that are casualties as they get older. So they take all these data and they're looking for trends. They're trying to see what's going on with their kids. So this is just a different version of looking at all the data we just looked at. Are y'all with me, or is this confusing? Good?
This is
Okay.
good.
So you're looking at, you see here, composite versus TRC. It's pretty predictable. And believe it or not, the schools that I work with don't really have a handle initially on their data like this until they jump into the 4-step. Because it's really, in order to get step one done, you got to dig and dig and dig and dig. So you can see that it's really predictable that they start to decline a little bit from second to third, but they tank between third and fourth. All right, so back to step one. We've talked about this in review. What do you want them to do that they're not? What's their current level? Where should they be? What's their peer performance and what's the gap? So I'm going to be quiet and let you take a look at this. And you should have these in your slides that there's a link to. So just take a look at what this says. Can you see it okay? Good. So I skipped this one. I don't think I did this one. I don't know how I skipped it. So their problem identification in elated elementary and their SLT was there's a decrease or a lack of growth in third grade reading, which continues into fourth grade. So their goal is that the third grade kids will get up to 80%, because we all have that conversation where if you get them up high enough, if the instruction is as solid the next year, they won't fall as far as does that make sense? So I was always interested by this because for me, sometimes I would say, well, why don't we start with fourth grade? Let's get the fourth grade kids where they need to be. But in this case, they identified that third grade is the issue for their fourth grade. Does that make sense? Because I had to sit with this for a little bit when I first saw this years ago. It's like, why didn't we start with like third grade to get them where they need to be so they won't fall so much? And they were saying fourth grade is a casualty of third grade.
I think establishing that or compiling the data and creating that trend line was very helpful for them to do this.
Absolutely. Because I thought, oh, for sure, we're going to do fourth grade. So any questions on this? So significant drop in proficiency in fourth grade for over 2 years. We looked at that. Drop begins in third grade. Everybody's supposed to be at 80%. Using the data, the middle of year data shows that 52% of the third graders are proficient on the composite and 57% on the TRC. So there's been virtually no growth in the third grade. I'll show you a slide in a second that really points that out. So they're looking at third grade going, they came in here, beginning of the year, and middle of the year, they should be here, but they're here. You follow me? So what they're saying is by looking at these data, and you can flip back through the slides up here, it's like they didn't make any growth. Their current growth should be at 68%. So the chart is this one. They should be at 68% right now, depending on, let's just say it's right here. So 2014 or 2013, they were here. So the next year they should have been on this trend line at about 68%. You with me? Yes or no? Okay. So step 2, as you recall, we know this because we just did it. So we're going to start by doing the ISO. we'll show you what they did. Instructional, curriculum, environment, learner. Yay, those are the 4 areas of the hypotheses. And then we look at the validation part, which is testing. And this is what, hang on, I gotta get rid of this chat here. So the MRY
Jacqueline
data,
has
middle
a
of year data.
question.
Sorry,
I think Jacqueline has a question. She has her hand raised.
Oh,
I can't see her. Okay,
no,
go
I
ahead,
don't.
Jacqueline.
I'm having computers issues. Don't
No
mind me.
worries. Thanks for the cue. Appreciate that. What's your question?
I didn't have one.
Oh.
I've got a
Oh, you're
computer
having
glitch I'm trying to
computer
fix.
issues.
I'm
You're
sorry.
just playing with all the gadgets. I know that.
No, sorry.
All right. So they're going on the fact that, again, this was like, oh, I get it. 3rd graders didn't make growth. So they didn't get the prerequisite skills you might hypothesize that they needed to be successful in 4th grade. Versus if you look at those data, you go, well, whatever they're doing in 4th grade is not working because the kids are tanking, right? You look at this. But in fact, their data for 3rd grade shows that they didn't make the growth that was expected in 3rd grade. And that's what this looks like. So beginning of the year to middle of the year. So the blue line, growth needed to achieve 80% is the blue line. So they came in at 52-ish. I had a pointer, I don't know how to do this, 52-ish. So they have to follow that blue line throughout the year. And on the bottom of the screen, you can see BOI, MOI, end of year. So to get to the end of the year, that's the trajectory they need to follow. And what they found was the beginning of the year started at 52%. The middle of the year, the aim line is at 66. In order to be on track, you should be, according to this trajectory, at 66%. Do you see that? Yes? Okay. But their actual middle of the year is at 52. So they started at, is that right? At 52. Middle of the year is at 52. I'm sorry, beginning of the year is at 52. Middle of the year is about 52. So they're a good 14% point below where they should be. And then the end of the year, they're supposed to be at 80%. But realistically, they're not going to get to 80% given that trajectory. So what they want to get them to as a result of this is get them at least to 60% realistically, given that there's been 0 gains at beginning and middle. So talk to me about what's running through your head with that slide. Does it make sense? The power of looking at data,
So I got a question. If you're looking, this is cohort data, correct? So,
kids, beginning, middle, and end, yeah.
and for 1 year, not
Yeah.
tracking them from 3rd through 5th.
Not on this chart. This is the current
Not on
3rd
this-
grade. Yeah.
That's because that's what I find hard if you work with a transient population. It's hard to match your data and really see the movement when you've got a huge flux of kids entering and leaving every year.
So, I'm trying to think, it doesn't matter what district it is. So there's a way to isolate that. So in all fairness to teachers and the morale and all that hard work that goes into it, you got to isolate. You can do the aggregate, which this is. And then to your point, Jen, you've got to disaggregate the kids that have been consistent
All the way through.
because it's
Okay.
just not fair to teachers and administrators to just say you suck.
Right.
You've got a transient, nobody would say that, but transient, because it's a real deal. I mean, I worked with
It
another
is.
this like, oh my God, we have a 45% mobility rate, yada, yada, yada. So you look at the aggregate because nobody gets off the hook. And then
Right.
you isolate those kids that came and went. And, I do a lot of work in the probation system for youth. And we have the same thing. Those kids get processed and they may be there for 2 days and gone, or they may be there for 30 days and gone. And so in order to be able to track the growth, you got to isolate each and individual kid to see if they made, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
The other thing, Shelton, this reminds me of what you were talking about, common language, common understanding. What is the data? What does it look like? So when you're looking at your iReady data, where did they start? Where should they be mid-year? Did they, I mean, the graphic of people looking at this is very powerful. What's running through your head, Shelton? I can see you. I can't see Jacqueline, but I can see you.
So this is the actual growth, not projected from
Actual
mid.
growth.
Yes.
The
Okay.
only one that would be realistically projected is the 60% at the end of the school year. Because some people go, okay, you're at 52%. You got to be at 80 by the end of the school year. That's not realistic. And people just, you know, they turn off, they roll their eyes and go, yeah, okay, what are you smoking? So realistically, that's where, you know, I can't emphasize enough. People are working as hard as they can. They may not be working on the right stuff, but they're working as hard as they can. And so to say to this third grade team of teachers that you got to get, doesn't matter where you are, you got to get them to 80%. It's just not fair and it's not nice. Do we want them to 80%? Absolutely. Are we going to try to get there? Absolutely. But realistically, we will be so pleased if you can get them to 60. So let's shoot for 60. Let's go for 80, but you got to be at 60. Does that make sense?
What was going through my head is I would love to see this like a 3-year trend on their beginning, middle, and end of year data, just to say, like, are we making no jump repeatedly from beginning to middle, and then we are making this gain? Because then my question to that team would be, are you just going, oh crap, when you see the data? Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing differently the second half of the year that we maybe need to put on the front end?
So this is the oh crap for me. And I think I showed, I don't, if I showed you the data for Happy High School, is that the compelling why of the data is they have this beautiful graph with everything is perfectly aligned and everything's, and they're all, and it's terrible. And they didn't look at it. They went, oh crap, we had no idea. Kids that are in third grade, they could predict the kids that are going to graduate based on their third grade reading, their 8th grade reading. They could tell you by hair color, by eye color, by ethnicity. And it was a perfect map of failure, just like this is sort of. So to your point, I am a huge proponent fan of, you got to look at trend data. So the trend data they looked at is the stuff that we started the case study with, all of these things, right? So now they're saying, okay, we got to dig a little deeper because there's something going on and we're isolating third grade. So let's dig into the third grade. It's sort of like Happy High School said, 9th grade kids are bombing. What are they bombing in? Well, looks like it's math. Now we're going to dig into math. It's not attendance. It's not. So to your point, Shelton, this is absolutely, I would want to look at this over a couple of years to see if this is, you know, it seems to be on the data that they pull together that this is, at least you got a couple of years of data saying third grade. Questions about that? Because I'm still in the back of my head going, why didn't we do 4th grade? Let's get these kids where they need to be. It could be an and.
Yeah.
Because you're not giving the kids in rising third graders don't have what they need to be successful in 4th grade literacy. Go ahead, Shelton.
I was thinking the same thing. Definitely an and. I've been talking to some principals about their data, and one of the things we were talking about is looking at those years before the transition years. Really, you know, we need to focus on all of it, but if we really have to put all of, you know, like our extra resources towards something, maybe we need to look at 2nd grade and 4th grade. Because we're trying to get those kids more prepared for middle school.
100%. You start with the baby kids, like K2, full court press. Because you got to have those skills. So let's look at their long-term goal was that we're going to get 80% of the third graders by 2018, not next year, not, you know, but we're going to at least the immediate goals to get them to 58 to 60% by the end of the school year. So cut them a little break. Your immediacy is to get them to 60%, but by 2018, you got to get them where they need to be. So their next, as you know, you do your stickies. And so they did their hypothesizing and they said, well, it's a lack of differentiated reading materials. You can see all the things here. And then they sorted them. Failure to implement best practices. They did their matrix and they found that lowest cohort of the students in school, high rates of absences. So you see all of the stickies that they did. So again, Jen, to your point, you can't do them all. So you prioritize the most critical and you prioritize by the domino effect. So here's what they did. And I know we have about 7 minutes left, so I'm going to do this as a quick review. So same, kids are not meeting benchmark because there's high absenteeism. When and if they come to school on a daily basis, they would meet that. Their second hypothesis was they're not doing well because they lack the use of instructional best practices during literacy. And then when you use those, proficiency will get better. And then lack of available differentiated reading materials is a reason hypothesis. And when we give the kids differentiated reading material, they'll do better. So those were their 3 hypotheses. Same. Absenteeism. High student absenteeism. We're not using best practices during instruction and we need differentiated reading materials. So here's what they did. For their first hypothesis, they said, we're going to review the attendance. Looks very similar to Happy High School. So they went in and looked at all the teachers and said, pretty good. Attendance looks good. It's not a bad deal. Would you agree? Yeah, they're doing pretty well on that. So the riot result shows that student attendance is 98% for 3 out of the 4 classes. One is at 91%. So it's a environment thing. Did we reviewed it? Did we validate that attendance is an issue? We didn't validate it because they're doing pretty well in that. I'm walking through this, so please interrupt me if you have questions. So for this one, instructional practices, same walkthrough protocol because they're in the same district as Happy High School. So they were going to use a walkthrough protocol. They're going to observe them during their engagement, and then they're going to see, do an interview. So looks familiar to Happy High School. So what are the 2 areas they spend the most time in?
That's a lot of whole group.
A lot of whole
Independent
group.
practice.
And independent practice.
Practice.
Independent practice for people who are not reading proficiently.
Not a good practice.
No.
So, I mean, the cool thing is they've got this walkthrough protocol that they use, and it's not a gotcha. It's a helping tool. So they model a little bit, too much whole group instruction, small group instruction, independent practice. So you see what's going on. They do 2% of their reading instruction is rotations, which means it's just large group, whole group. Nobody gets any intensification. Then they looked at by teacher. This is fascinating. I love that this district does this with their walkthrough data. So take a look at that.
So teacher D is the only one who has her students writing?
Looks like it. In small group. Teacher D, the green is small group, right? And writing, I'm sorry, is the blue. Yes. So teacher D is doing small group and writing.
She's probably pulling their scores.
Well, and unfortunately, that's what happens. You got one that's going to pull the weight of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why this is so powerful, because you don't want to say to all the 3rd grade, you all are not strong teachers. And you also don't want to say, well, teacher D is pulling your scores up. It's good for administrators and support folks to have an understanding of this.
Mm-hmm.
So they're all of those teachers except D are doing a whole bunch of whole group, a whole bunch of independent practice. And shockingly, guess who has the best results for the kids? Teacher D. She even does rotations, or he. All right, so let's look at The results of this, I didn't show you the interview because it's the same thing. They did high and low risk students. So take a look at the riot results. %78% is spent on whole group and independent practice. Wow. Three out of five teachers use whole group for more than 50%. Wow. Make sense? So when I started seeing these data, I'm like, yeah, brilliant that you did third grade. Holy moly. Wow. The stuff that you uncovered by digging into the data. All right, let me do this one with you and then we can, we'll finish this one and then we can wrap up. So they're saying we don't have available resources. And if we had available differentiated resources, kids would do better. So they surveyed, which they call a test, the teachers about their knowledge and use of the level literacy books that are available in the book room. Okay, so they wanted to know what the teachers know about. And so let's take a look at that and you can see what the questions were. Okay. It's very loud. All right, so pretty straightforward questions, yeah? Here's the answers. Shocking. Who's got yeses all the way across? Teacher D.
D.
Yeah, and just to go back, Teacher D. So interestingly enough, do they know they have a leveled book room? 100% of them said, yeah, we know we have that. Do you know how to use it? Yeah, pretty much. Have you used the materials? No. Question 3, no. Do you use level reading materials or anything else during literacy? 60%. And then do you use a basal reading during literacy instruction? Ding, 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 ding. 100% said yes. So that's how that looks. The teacher team, results of the riot, the teacher team are aware that they have access to differentiated reading, but they just don't use it. So is it validated or not? Take a look at the validated yes or no. So what are your thoughts on this thing that we just went through? Case study, powerful. I mean, just powerful.
I think
What
just
do you- yeah,
based
go
on,
ahead, Jacqueline.
just based on the data, it shows that they're using a basal reading series. They're aware that there's differentiated reading materials. They're just not using them. I guess my first thought is if they're not working with these students, they don't really have a true understanding of where their deficits even are.
That's why my brain went to fourth grade. Let's go after fourth grade. And it's like, it's bigger than fourth grade. This to me gets me so excited. This is the beauty of the 4-step problem solving process. You look at all your data. I mean, and it started by them saying, you got to be at 80% by 2018. You're not going to make it. It's going to take you 10 years. Okay, let's start digging. Happy High School, same thing. Graduation rate, what's going on? Why are we not there? And you just start digging and then you come up with this and go, wow, that is incredible. Shelton, what's running through your brain?
I want to do this with teachers.
Yeah. And,
I
you know,
want the principals to do it with the teachers because I think it does. The instructional practice makes such an impact, the way that we use instruction in a classroom. And it cannot be one size fits all. It cannot be sage on the stage. And
so I
my
think
plan would be PD in instructional practices.
it'd be really cool to do this with your other central office people around, or whoever you work with around some data, pick something. It also would be very powerful because I would, you know, in general, most of our principals may not be strong instructional leaders and may not really understand their data. So this is a way to very kindly take the energy out of data and say, wow, had no idea that this was going on. So case study, elementary, to give it, you have this in the slides, you can look at it, and we can certainly discuss it more. We have one more session together. And so in that session, we will definitely go through step 4. And it's one of those things where it has more meaning once you have step 3 done, but we will definitely go through and make sure you understand it. It's pretty straightforward. And then in the time that we have, if there's any burning questions that you would like to discuss about just MTSS implementation in general, bring those or send those to me or do whatever you want to do. Certainly put them in the chat now if you have time, but we're a little bit over. So we have one more session, June 4th. Think about the case study. We can totally review whatever you want to do. That's our last session. How are we feeling? Helpful, not helpful, overwhelming? We're okay.
I think this is great.
Yes, very helpful.
Yeah, and it's, again, I always say to people, first time going through is a little clunky, so case studies are really helpful. I would encourage you to pick a little piece of data or a little piece of your world and tinker with it. Sort of like, you know, Jen, you picked a school that you're working with. You know, yeah, just play with it. So, anything for the good of the group, Susan, Jen, Deanna?
We have an evaluation. If everybody will take just a moment and fill that out, that would be great. That gives us feedback. There's also a place on that form if you want to suggest anything, and we'll get that to Dr. Elliott.
Yeah, if you have any burning questions about what you'd like to talk about next week or the next time we're together, absolutely, we can do that. You guys are amazing rock stars. Awesome. That's a complicated case study. You did well with it. Very nice.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody.